Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive in this era of accelerating technological change. Whether you're looking to lead more effectively, make smarter investments, or understand how to harness disruptive technologies for exponential growth, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature conversations with visionary thinkers, industry pioneers, and innovative leaders who are redefining what's possible in today's rapidly evolving world. So if you're ready to start and stay ahead of this curve, let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. All right. Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the Exponential Growth podcast. Today we have a dear friend of mine, known him about 5 or 6 years or so, and have just watched him in his career at PNC just really take off, and what he's doing as he leads retail branch banking for PNC, but also has had leadership experiences at JPMC, many boards, as well as our military service as well. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff Martinez.
Thank you, David. Proud to be here.
All right, excellent, Jeff. So a lot of experience, military, financial services, and then really financial, in the leadership side.
Sure.
An amazing journey. I know a little bit about it, but I don't know all of it. But can you walk our listeners through your leadership journey to get all the way to you're at leading retail branch banking at PNC?
Yeah. Well, thanks, David. Again, appreciate the opportunity. I'm obviously not only a fan of you personally and what you do through Angeles and the rest of the board, but obviously a fan of exponential growth and some of the learning a lot from a lot of those that you've had on the show before. It's always very insightful. My journey, I believe there's a lot of typical or similarities to a Latino growing up from a Cuban exile, as my father, migrated in, 59, 60 from Cuba. My mom, who came from Colombia, and, just centered around what was a very warm but discipline-driven upbringing, really centered around education. And so a lot of the initial commentary or questions I get, I was like, look, I think I was surrounded by the importance of education, which has always led a curiosity within my personality. And so, similar, worked my way, as I got to college in Rutgers and, coming from a family that would have struggled to pay for a typical college education. And again, was fortunate to get some scholarships going through college. I did find an alternative route, which you've mentioned through the military, was joining the Army National Guard, which at the time was kind of pre-Iraq war. And so again, naive, or at the time, thought I would just take a semester off and come back and stay within my regular educational pursuit. But went into the Army, was out in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is the home of the artillery, and ultimately came back to Rutgers on the heels of what was the conflict overseas. And so again, as I committed to, and I'm a man of responsibility and my word, spent what would be the next 9 years across 2 tours. So I got to live in Iraq 2 full years on each separate account. So 04, 05, Northern Iraq, and 08, 09 in Southern Iraq. And a lot of that, again, I attribute a lot to my military experience. And I'd always say it was a nice balance between professional ambition. So as people say, like, hey, how was your transition so smooth? It was always not even in the back of my mind, in the front of my mind, and going through any experience saying, how can I bring this back to what ultimately my long-term goal was? Found during that time was working at Chase in college as a teller. And again, that
Wow.
just
I didn't know
worked
you were
for
a
my
teller. Like I knew you'd done some things that I mean, I didn't know you were a
yeah,
teller and
yeah.
work your way up. Wow, really
Yeah,
cool.
so started as a part-time teller, worked with my schedule, became a full-time teller, and frankly, as my educational career or my undergraduate career came to a close, my military career had added some definitive moments in learning. I was kind of in between like what would be next. I went for business management with a focus in finance. And what I found was that I was just in love with a business that served people with a financial umbrella and kind of themes around social mobility. That was my draw. It was one career that for me I was learning as I was teaching and coaching, and that just kept me really enamored with the business. And it was what I try to say today was one where you can easily feel instant gratification by what you do within a community and their client. And so that is simple as having a one-on-one as a banker and teaching someone how to bank for the first time, the do's and don'ts, don't overdraft, save money, check your account online, here's your balances, to ultimately seeing the impacts of people purchase their first home, invested for the first time, got to a place where they were able to retire. And again, a lot of that helped me myself personally, and then so you take to a place where I now knew I loved the path I was headed, but I knew I wanted to do it in a bigger scope. And so, found myself leading branches in Manhattan and in Queens. And then I made the transition almost 12 years ago to PNC. That has just been, nothing short of a dream in terms of not only the work that we do, the broader work within our community and beyond, and the impact that we get to have on business. So leading from what would be a region, so think about that as a county, to then leading at a market level, which is like at a state level, a territory, kind of northeast, southeast parts of the U.S., and then ultimately a little over the last 3 years, getting to lead the entire retail distribution. So that's almost 2,300 branches and quickly growing, and now inclusive of our acquisition of First Bank out in Colorado and Arizona, as well as our mobile branch team, sales strategy, and enable.
Well, too, and like for the listeners out there, I think everybody, I'd say not everybody, but most of the listeners out there, you come across a PNC branch probably daily or every week or so you're seeing, and to know, when you think actually every time I see one, I think of you, Jeff.
Thanks.
So but it's just amazing growth there. And you talk about exponential growth. I mean, what you guys are
Yeah,
doing with these branches is amazing. I wanted to just double. I mean, I knew you'd done military service, but I didn't
yeah,
know you did multiple tours in Iraq.
yeah,
What were the key? It's got to be tough, And by the way, my father served. I have uncles that have served. I didn't, but I admire the leadership lessons. What just a handful of just things you learned, and how did that build you up as a leader, kind of going halfway around the
yeah,
world in the conflict, serving? What could you share with
yeah.
our listeners?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple things, and I'll give one example of maybe my biggest learning while I served. But I think you lean in on one attribute I know is resilience. There is a part you build thicker skin, where I think the military allows you to exponentially blow that out is helping others build that same level of resilience. And so as you lead in the military, you fortify your own strengths, but only in a way that you can deliver it through others. So there has to be this transferability, because I am only as good as the squad, the platoon, the company, that especially in some life or death situations. And so it becomes more about the whole, not just the individual, but you need the individual to be able to again transfer those skill sets, motivate and inspire the whole. Discipline is critical. There is things where I know I'm always on target to the end state of the mission. Like to me, there is the start, the middle, and the end of any standard operating mission statement, but it's getting to the end to me that's critical. And so either starting from the beginning and making sure you have all the equipment, people, all the intel that you need. That still is very relevant today, not just in a mission that would have been in Iraq, but hey, we want to deploy a new product. We want to go into a new geography. Do I have the right team? Do I have the right equipment? Do I have the right technology? Do I know everything about this geography? And so a lot of it, again, as I've digested, has allowed me to just deploy very similar with a couple pivots in what I do day to day, not only professionally, but personally as well. The one quick story was on my first tour, the way the National Guard worked was as people didn't decide to go over, so there's some that opted not to fulfill on their patriotic duties. I ended up in a much larger job with a much lower rank. And the way the National Guard is, your rank is based on slots. So if someone didn't go but still held that slot, you couldn't get promoted, but the job still needed to be done. So that job was the intel briefing that allowed us to prepare for the missions that then we went out. So not only build it and create it, but I would then go on those same missions out into the war zone. And I was by far the lowest ranked receiving this data, needing to plead for what my specific company needed. And so in the military, you can be shut up by ranked, right? So I'm outranked. I can have something great to say, but it's like, hey, you're not being addressed, so be quiet. So much different, maybe, than corporate America. Definitely different than at PNC. But and so what I learned was, hey, sometimes the first to speak doesn't always mean the most impactful. There is a value to listening and being strategic, even when you're anxious to give out what you believe is the right answer. And so if you were there watching or observing, maybe those first two meetings, you would have said, damn, Jeff's a little quieter than I would have thought for someone sitting around this table. That was understanding again. My audience was someone that, based on my rank, if I didn't want to be heard, I didn't have to be heard. And so I had to strategically position when would I jump in and capture the kind of audience hearts and minds. And it was right at the end of the second meeting of this intel briefing. And there was a little bit where I saw the audience was found where there was a problem with no answer. And I said, this is my cue. I know it. I've studied this. And so as I kind of give out the recommendation, ears perk up, you can tell my rank disappeared. I was a valuable part of that audience that then future state was tapped on, not again based on my rank, but because of the value that they brought. And so in some cases, people feel like, Jeff, well, I'm not at that level. And so it's allowed me to speak, first of all, listen, but speak in audiences that maybe would say, hey, that's not for me, that's for a higher rank. No, your voice is valuable everywhere. Just be positioned in a way where it's going to be properly heard. And then that's where my number one quote I use, which is no one cares what you know until they know that you care, kind of like really showed up. And that's like more of the listening, understanding and that's helped me throughout my career and even in meetings that I'm at today.
Yeah, no, it's great and it's insightful because there's always, I admire the military and the leadership lessons and the leaders that come out of it and just the way they think about, certain things and tackle problems and lead, right, quite
Yeah.
frankly. So that's very, very insightful, Jeff. So this Exponential Growth podcast, right? There's a lot of trends that are happening out there. The thesis is, hey, things are happening so fast, changing so fast, right? This podcast is about how do we get different viewpoints and perspectives? Like, what do you see are the trends that our listeners out there, and right, we've talked about your background.
Yeah.
What are the trends that you see that are out there that they should be aware of and prepare for, so that they can be successful?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll break it down maybe to again, this is from my point of view, obviously a point of view that I think is helping lead our retail channel here in a effective and differentiating way, and also the way I apply my view to even my own business decisions and investment decisions. So in this kind of two-prong approach is the obvious and visible impact of what machine learning, AI is brought into the workspace. I've been excited, PNC. We have Copilot active across our entire footprint, and that's down to our bankers and tellers. So being able to take what can be a longer list of work and try to aggregate that into much quicker data, quicker responses. And that's absolutely changing the game. We recently had an employee survey, which historically, and I still will, I like to read line by line of every employee feedback that they give us. The feedback is a gift, and I take roughly across 2 weekends and read every line across what is 15,000 retail employees that they give.
Wow, that's a
But
lot.
it is, but I enjoy it. Again, I want to be closer to the field. But this year with Copilot, I got to take that entire column H plug it into Copilot, give me some themes, give me some next steps, highs and lows. And so immediately, instead of saying, hey, Jeff, it'll take Jeff about 2 weeks to start to surmise, I get to quickly in the field. So on ROI is I am 2 weeks faster on action than I
Right.
historically have ever been with 30,000-foot themes that my leadership team can immediately start embracing, that I can start thinking about some other things. So again, what I know you've heard on this podcast often is that just data and understanding data in a much more um, in a way in which we can activate. I am an activator. Data
Yeah.
without use or purpose to me
Yeah.
is useless. Like
It's
what
useless. It's a
does it tell
waste.
us?
Yeah.
So there's this speed to market that I think it'll continue for us and be a nice disruptor. And again, getting our teams to use the resources more, use Copilot even more, not just for even the data aggregation, but to help challenge our own thinking. And so
Yeah.
I've gone
Of
for my
course.
leadership team and said, please, as you think of your strategies for 2026, plug it in, not as a way
Yeah.
to validate it, but tell me what are your pitfalls? What can go wrong with that strategy? What are you missing? And those that's creating this what almost this one-on-one dialogue with a process that we didn't have years ago. So it just allows us to vet and be more prepared for blind sides than maybe we would have been historically. On that same note, as again that shows up for our clients, our employees, I'm also in the camp of we need to exponentially pop out what human aspects may be lost in the future. And so if you've been on my LinkedIn recently, you see something, especially in the last, it rained a ton here in New Jersey. We had beautiful bright orange umbrellas that we ordered for every branch across the country, and those have been deployed. And so what that means is now a holistic experience at PNC means I am faster with my data. I know you quicker than maybe I did before, but I'm going to humanize that through an experience that feels more human. Because at some point, when do we cross where it doesn't feel so big brotherish or like, hey, why would you know that info? But if at the front of the branch, I've shaken your hand, I'm Jeff. I've been expecting you. We get into a real great conversation. It's raining outside. You get a gratitude card. So to me, aligning it to both what technology allows us to move, but then the human, I think they just have to go hand in hand. That's my
Yeah.
approach. I believe in it because I think others are going to over-index too far off and just get to a place where, hey, you're right, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to be right, but I want it to feel good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're going to differentiate yourself that way as well,
Yeah,
right? If other people are doing it that way, I mean, and you're in a competitive environment, right?
for sure.
Your competitors are using this and trying to flank you in military
Yeah,
terms,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so you have to be on it. So you see the trend, but what I like is you've shared a couple ways of how you're using it, want to continue to use it, and with that
And,
differentiator
and
there.
staying core to your culture, your mission, and your vision. I see what's coming as a way, like my value prop and the culture we're building isn't changing because of AI. It is accelerating because of AI. Some, I think, will choose to pivot outside of what's helped them be who they are and almost like a rebrand. And I'm not saying that's wrong everywhere, but to me, like it's fortifying PNC's value prop. It's fortifying our values, not course correcting it. And so it's leaning into the principles you believe, and then finding ways how does this help you run fast.
Yeah, yeah. And you pop those core beliefs, those values into AI as in the Copilot as your anchor, and then every
Yeah,
activity and the thing you do around that, you're making those come to
yeah.
life.
Even though every
Um,
once in a while you got to remind it again. Like
yeah, 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 yeah.
you
No,
have
you gotta
forgotten
read.
that this
You
is a
got
core
no,
principle.
or when they make a mistake, you guys, hey, wait a second, are you
Yeah,
sure? And then sometimes
that does
AI
not
it'll be
sound.
like, yeah, AI will be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry,
That's right.
it'll be
Yeah,
like,
that's right. I
but thank
forgot
you
that.
for reminding me. It's
Yes,
like
yes, yes,
kind of
yes.
crazy. Okay, so Jeff, a big trend. Now investing, right? So you've had an interesting journey, and now you're at a bank. So obviously in the financial services industry, I know You've have a interesting perspective on investing in asset classes and all that kind of stuff. What would you share with our listeners who range? Some maybe have very little stock, maybe a 401k, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have some who are investing in startups and real
Yeah.
estate and crypto and all kinds of stuff, right? So just can you what are your with all these trends that are going on, how should we think about investing, or what are your perspectives that you could share with
Yeah.
the audience?
Yeah, no, it's a great question and one I get asked often. I think the first and most important part is there's resources out there. And so no one, whether it's self-directed resources, that whether we use AI to help vet out our thoughts, a podcast or YouTuber that we feel has a good understanding, or your local financial institution that has a financial advisor that can help guide through retirement or obviously any big monumental changes. So the first piece for me is lean in on your resources. Like it isn't betting, even though again we know and understand that there's risk attributes at every level, and we have to understand those risks. But I think it's important to lean in on professionals that have done this and do this for their profession. I would not self-diagnose myself if I'm feeling sick. Yes, maybe I may start by Googling it, so I may be directionally correct, but I will lean into financial professionals that do it. It's like, hey, Angeles, for instance, the amount of vetting that goes on before we put the 3 to 5 pitches on stage that shouldn't be done by your regular everyday individual on where they invest. We've left it to the professionals. David, you and your team, what are the 3 to 5 best options that I have? If I were to start at the 200 that you get quarterly, I am more prone to making mistakes. So back to leaning on resources and those professionals that do it. Look, there's a lot of sexy things going on in the market, from crypto and stable coins to private equity and private debt, the market. We see what's happening across the market today. Some new highs, some new lows. And again, for me, I've always been one where you have to make sure you're in a position of strength. And so, what do you need to retire, to not have debt, to own your home? Those things I believe are still a core requirement before you go into some of maybe the more potentially lucrative or more risk-centered investment approaches. And so sometimes I'll talk to people that are thinking about the next big move in the market, but maybe have debt that today is very costly. And so some of that discussion is like, hey, I understand, I can appreciate your big idea, but have you looked at your finances holistically? And a lot of times that is missed, David. People are not looking at the debt that they incur, the income that they make, and the potential opportunity for growth in the market. It
Totally.
can't just be one of those singular verticals. And so you'll find, and probably no different than you find walking into a PNC branch, like no one's going to give you the hot stock ticker. That's not going to
Yeah,
happen. That
yeah,
is a lack of fiduciary responsibility. But it'll be like, whoa, tell me a little bit more about yourself. How much do you make? How much do you spend? That little piece in the middle, that's what you keep. Now talk to me about, when do you want to retire? How much money do you need to retire? Once you get all that stuff, that again, to be somewhat cliche, but I'll lean into the brilliantly boring campaign that is PNC. That is the boring part of finance that most people don't want to talk about. They just
yeah,
want to talk about, hey, I doubled my money on Nvidia. I just
yeah.
put some money in some private equity, versus like, let's look at it holistically. You absolutely may be in that space. And again, like if 10 years ago, David, I might have not been as an eager of an angel investor as I am today with Angeles if it wasn't for getting those core principles right. Now, it
Yeah.
has allowed me to springboard into a place where, yes, both through my advisor, through the work at Angeles, through maybe some other things like real estate, I can create a very diversified portfolio. But if I didn't go back 10 years ago and make those right decisions, I wouldn't be on solid footing today. So, my perspective, think things holistically, how much you make, how much you owe, other aspects of it, as then you can be much more versatile within the market.
Yeah, and these are, the what you call, brilliantly boring, but these are like fundamentals. Like if you don't have this fundamental, this foundation, right? set, then it's going to be tough. And I think you triggered a thought, and I was having more conversations about this. Credit cards are in the 28, 29,
Is
27%.
it?
And there's so many people who are living paycheck to paycheck, and their credit cards are maxed, and they'll never get out of this thing. They'll
Yeah.
never get out
Yeah.
of this thing, right? And then heaven forbid they lose a job or something like that happens, right? And so so those, call it, those boring but fundamental things are vital, and it's vital for so many people because they're giving out debt, they're giving out these credit card companies.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, right? So
I mean, the fact that we're at a
mm,
historical high, I mean, there are parts, consumer spending is a challenge. I think the age of social media and what we have to keep up with the Joneses is
yeah,
causing some psychological challenges today. And I mean, we saw the announcement from Amazon and others throughout. And again, the fact that today we don't have a clear view on the job market or labor market. There's things that are important, but the fundamentals are so critical because I think they'll become, and again, during challenging times, you may be again eager in the market if you don't have 6 months of reserves, which again, boring, but
yeah.
essential to then allow you to make again maybe more bold decisions or conservative decisions based on your age, based on your income. There's so many factors that I think there's a lot of internal reflection first, vetting, and then by all means, then help out your community, be philanthropic, and again, like we have with some of the portfolio companies at Angeles, believe in a company that we think can drive exponential growth.
There you go. And so we talk about leadership, right? So, and we hit on a couple points on leadership, right? That you hit early on with in the military service. And you look at things that are happening so fast, right? In terms of just technology advances, what's happening in blockchain and crypto, what's happening with
Mhm.
AI, how quantum is transferring, I think one of the issues with credit cards is just how easy it is to spend money. How easy it is to
Sure.
buy
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Tap your
And,
phone.
and,
You
and,
don't have to take out your card.
basically, they keep making it
Yeah.
easier and easier to buy
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not disciplined there, but all that said, there's a lot of technology change, and it's not slowing down. This is the other
Yeah.
theme of
Oh
this
yeah.
this so, any other additional things that our listeners from your leadership, right? You got
Yeah.
financial services leadership, anything else that as you lead and lead teams, and what do you see or what do you advise our members on leadership?
Yeah. I said a point earlier, but I'd probably lean on two things: curiosity and visibility.
Yeah.
And the purpose around curiosity is, look, I have a leadership team that hits every age bracket, early 20s to early 60s, and everyone's in their own different tech journey, and you'd be surprised who's where. So there, don't judge a book by its cover, as I've learned from plenty that are a little bit my senior and what they've been able to do and deploy and how that's helped them with business. So it is a responsibility of a leader to be curious, especially around technology, because they may not find it in the space that works for them in their day job or personally, but it will maybe potentially lack the insight that's needed for other roles that they lead. So it is the responsibility of any manager, senior leader, leader of an organization or vertical to try new things because their teams are trying new things. So it allows them to be much more relevant. It creates a level of not only confidence, but credibility. And so you have to drive curiosity for credibility, even if you ultimately say, I can understand this tool, it doesn't apply to what I do, but now I know what it does as we get in dialogue with the rest of our team. The second part around visibility is to visibly use it. One question I love our PNC teammates, because anytime I'm out in the field, which is every single week, I get tremendous recommendations. And often it's around the use of AI, machine learning, anything. I love their recommendations. What I tend to do is ask, if I gave this to you tomorrow, what changes? What that question starts to unfold is a lot of people have suggestions. Very few are ready to deploy that suggestion immediately. And so what I try to get, great, hey, that's great insight. So a client walks in, tell me how the conversation's different. Well, Jeff, I haven't really thought about that. Well, great. So all you have today is an idea. You haven't figured out how to activate it. And so those are the questions as you get out and be visible. It not only again, vets out some of these suggestions, but starts to build a mindset of, hey, when it comes, I'm ready. So again, we'll get it often. So what 5 clients, and we deployed something recently, which I love. We're one of the few, if not only financial institutions where our branch managers can go to a place of business and set up their full relationship offsite. So that's fully, you talk about e-signature, e-doc and e-consent, account generator, all the things that they're able to do to bring the full benefits of PNC anywhere to any corner of this country as long as we have Wi-Fi. And as people started asking about that, I said, "Great, what client would you see next week?" I don't have one. Well, so that means I will spend millions of dollars, which it is.
Right.
Nothing is free, right? None of this is
Right.
free,
Right. Right.
and yet it will fall short. And so, like my leadership team, starting with me, it's like, hey, let's vet that out. And now that we've gone live in the back of July, August, I was just in Phoenix the last 2 days. Both two of the visits I was on, the manager's like, great. We looked, like, hey, I have a 2:30 where I'm going to a place of business that if I didn't have this technology, that would have been a
I won't
no,
be able
because
to do it.
it would
Yeah.
have said, hey, yes, sounds good. Now we're able to win that client share and market share. But now we were ready for it. So there is technology that will fall flat because we don't have the human capital that understands it, truly wants it, and then knows how to deploy it.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. I think the curiosity, I think more it's this continuous curiosity thing, right? I think everything you should always be. There's so much happening and it's new and it's happening fast, right? You like curious, like what is happening on the blockchain? What is happening with what's the future going to? I mean, a lot of it. I share some of this stuff on exponential growth, but I'm continuously curious. Like I'm going to write an
Yes, sir.
article this weekend. I've already written it, but it's going to talk about these the flying cars, right? I mean, it's just I'm curious about that. Like
Yeah,
where
yeah.
what the heck impact is that going
Finally,
to
the
have?
Jetsons.
Yeah, basically, right? Yeah. And so there's so many things that are happening so fast. This continuous curiosity, I think, is going to be key
Yeah,
for leaders. But you can be curious, but I think it's like then you got to do like kind of to your point, the next step.
yeah.
Well, what is
Activate it.
it, and what's the impact, and use artificial intelligence to like take your curiosity just a little bit level, and how could it impact things, right? I
Yeah,
mean, kind
yeah.
of the example that you shared.
And
Well,
knowing that
Jeff,
we're creatures of habit, like knowing we're creatures of habit, and you constantly have to challenge that. Like I,
yeah,
I just upgraded from held a while iPhone 14 to the 17, and I immediately found myself disgruntled just because I'm like, oh, this button's here, and it's a moment of
yeah,
reflection to be like, that thinking will slow me down. And so instead of looking at it through a lens of frustration, ask myself, why did that button move? Why is
yeah,
that now no longer available? And so like you just have to start with yourself to say, why is this making me upset that it
yeah.
is different than the way I've been doing something for the last 3 to 5 years? And then you'll find that curiosity leaves you, oh, that makes perfect sense. Now I get it. Versus again, maybe just being frustrated with change.
Yeah. Change. I mean, look, I mean, and as a leader too, it's right. How do you enable and get people comfortable with change? Change is hard. People,
It
people
is.
like to do, people like to do their thing. So Jeff, look, I know you got a lot of things going on, right? Driving amazing results at PNC in the retail branch banking area. I say you guys are cranking out these retail branches as fast as like tortillas out
Yeah.
there. So kudos to you and the team and what you're doing there, Jeff. How do people stay connected with you on social media?
Yeah. For me, primarily, I am a LinkedIn guy. So you find me on LinkedIn, Jeffrey Martinez, PNC. That's usually my primary. Would love to hear any thoughts, feedback. Again, I love the network we're building, especially through LinkedIn. It's been a big voice for not only the great momentum we're building at PNC, specific to my business, and even some personal attributes in there as well. So would love to hear from everyone, and always available and here to help.
Excellent, Jeff. And you also have for those who go into a retail branch bank of PNC, take a picture and there's this hashtag that they have hashtag Team PNC. I use it regularly, and it's like it's hot. It's like one of the
Yeah, yeah,
hashtags out there, right?
we try. Yeah, for sure. And again, and please, as you go into a branch, you should feel the hospitality and let me know. Let me know what you felt. Let me know what you saw. We're always trying to grow and learn. And, again, across our, not only across our 22 plus 100 existing branches, the soon to be added almost 100 branches with First Bank and the 200 branches we've committed to growing organically. A lot of great things happening, and feedback continues to make us better.
Oh, excellent, Jeff. Well, hey, everyone, keep an eye on Jeff, keep an eye on PNC, keep an eye on the retail branch banking area there. A lot of great things. Jeff, again, thanks for jumping on the podcast. We'll see
My
you
pleasure.
soon. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.